Welcome back to Roll Paper, the layout and the workbench. Today's video, decided to get something moving. I've got one of the boards up, just thought I'd run the Lake State Railway MP15 down with the subject of today's video, which is this ACFX general service tank car, and the subject of the video is how it was weathered. This is a very basic weathering I did on this tank car. It's just mostly done with the airbrush, 90% airbrush, dead simple, and didn't take very long at all. Ideal if you've got a fleet of cars to do, doing it this way would probably be the best way. I'll just move this locomotive out of the way because it's making rather little noise. So the subject of this video, as I say, is this ACFX general service tank car, which I weathered using just the airbrush with a little bit of dry brushing and a bit of wet around the top of the tanks. This is not really a how-to video, it's more just showing you how I did it. There's a lot of people, a lot more experienced, a lot more proficient at weathering than I am, but this is, I found, a quick and easy way of getting what I think is a nice finish on a tank car. I've got quite a few to do, so I thought I'd start with this one, practice these techniques, and then I can develop them as I go on with the other tank cars. I think I covered most of what I did in the video, though I did lose a few bits of footage. There's a couple of things that I haven't mentioned. First off, the first thing I've done is give it a wash down in Isopropyl Alcohol 99% to clean it off before I started, and then once that was done, I've handled it with gloves from then on in. I should mention that I did, and this is a prime example of why I wear gloves, I did pick this up. I'd finished spraying it, I'd put the fade coat on it and spotted that one of the handrails had come off, and in just a moment of lack of concentration I picked it up, forgetting that I'd already taken my gloves off, and I put a fingerprint, a nice sticky fingerprint from my thumb, on the side of the car, which I managed to clean off. I cleaned it up. I think I managed to do it without having to respray over it, but that was just showed me, you know, the importance of wearing the gloves all the time which you're working. I had hoped to shoot certainly this introduction outside, because under different lighting conditions you get different effects from the paint. Unfortunately, I've chosen potentially the worst week in the UK to do this filming. The weather is absolutely horrendous. We've got wind and rain, and I just couldn't get outside. So you perhaps don't in this introduction get the full effect of the paint, but hopefully you'll see as the video goes on how it's done, or the effect that it's had. I would say in editing this video I've also noticed that I say an awful lot. Probably my most used word in the English language as far as I can work out. I haven't been able to edit that out, so I'm really sorry. You'll have to put it with me all the way through, but I'm going to try and address that in future videos. Try and speak without every third word being and also without lots of gaps in my sentences, which I also seem to do. So anyway, on with the video. This is a slightly overlong coverage of very basic, very simple airbrush only weathering on a tank car. Ideal particularly if you've got an airbrush and you haven't had the confidence to get it out and use it. This is the perfect little exercise to try it on and build that confidence to work onto other things, which is what I've done with this project. Okay, I hope it's of interest and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so we're at the workbench and this is the model I'm going to be working on today. It's an Atlas 23,500 gallon tank car, ACFX in a plain black livery. I'm not actually sure what this would have carried. It's got its the little plate for the warning markers, but there's no UN number on there, so I don't know what this would have been carrying. Some of the other models have got have the UN number on the plate, so you can look up and see what they would have carried. This one hasn't got it. I'm guessing, well, I really don't know. I'll do a bit of research, see if I can find out. It's probably going to carry something nondescript into the roll paper layout at some point, and then once it's on the Morristown Leary layout, they do a lot of tank car storage and they do transload as well, so it doesn't really matter what it carries from that point of view. So the photograph that I'm working on for this project, I normally use, I've made extensive use in the past of railarchiveimages.net, but for this one I found a website that I haven't really seen much before, which is called trainiacs.net, and I'll put a link in the notes. And I found this photograph of a very similar tank car. Again, this is the same same capacity, and this is what I'm going to work off to weather this one. And looking at this, it's going to need a fade down, I think, initially, and then pretty extensive weathering on top with the rust and grime, particularly the run down the sides here from under the platform. The platform itself and the ladders don't appear to have faded as much as the rest of the car, and also have a slightly different pattern of weathering on, their own unique pattern. So what I'll do initially is take them off. I'll leave everything else on, including I think the trucks at the moment. So I'll probably remove the handrails and the platforms on the side, and I'll take the ladders off. I'm going to leave the brake gear on. In fact, no, I'll take the trucks off as well, because there's quite a lot. You can't see it on this image, but looking at some of the others, you get a lot of spray up from the wheels on the underside of the car, and I'll need to recreate that, and that will be much easier done without the trucks on. Runs at the end as well. So that's what I'm going to be working on with this one. So I think initially, first job, we'll take the ladders and the platforms off, load the airbrush with some very, very thin white. I'll use Tamiya white thinned with 99% isopropyl alcohol, and I'll spray that over, and we'll just lighten it up a bit, give it a much more faded and grey effect, which on the image it seems to have underneath all that grime. It's not as black as the model is in the first instance. It's quite interesting as well. Around the platforms, all this grime seems to have been sort of protected around the platform. So once I've got the fade on, I can mask that off, and then I'll work on that separately once the rest of the car is weathered. I think that's the plan how it's going to work at the moment. So we'll fire up the airbrush and get a coat of white on there to fade it down a bit. Didn't think I'd get that off without breaking it. I've managed to pull one of the fixing struts has come out. Not amazed that happened, to be honest. I'll try and work this one a little more gently, I think. I'll get the brake lever rodding out first. Simply if you do it carefully. what I tend to do is put all the parts, whatever I'm doing, in one of these plastic takeaway boxes. I'll probably label it so I know what it is for the future. I've got more than one project on the go at once. Keeps all the bits nice and safe together. Hopefully prevent me from losing anything. Or if I do lose it, I'll lose everything and make it worthwhile getting a replacement. Okay, so the first washer paint over the top is going to be Tamiya XF2 flat white, which I shall mix in a little jar with, just got some 99% isopropyl alcohol. I buy it in it's probably 1 litre bottles, decant it into this little bottle, makes it a bit easier to manage. I'm going to make it a nice thin mix because it wants to go on really thinly, just to fade it very slightly. I don't want it too extreme on this one. Gotta be honest, I don't think it's going to need much more than that. So I've just fetched another one to compare to the fade and the one obviously at the bottom that's unsprayed. That's just one pass with the white mix that I've done, and that's worked really quickly. So that's good. I'm happy with that. I'm going to pop these fades. They seem to fade all the way around, so I'm going to carry on the spray all the way underneath. This will also have, as I think I mentioned earlier, the up spray from the trucks underneath as well, and this will be the up spray at the ends there, so this will be darkened down quite a bit. Give it a second and I'll turn it over and do the other side. The good thing with these Tamiya paints, they dry really quickly. So we'll pop the other side, and I think that'll be okay on there. Just got a little mark on it there under the where the ladder's going to go, but I don't think that's the end of the world. It'll should be reasonably well disguised once the weathering's on. That's fine. I think I'll leave that as it is for now, and we'll look at getting a top coat on it. Okay, so I'm really happy with how that's turned out now. The fade has worked very nicely. And was a lot It's actually a bit quicker to do than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, that's worked quite well. It's just caught the edges of the rodding down the side, which, looking at the photo, that has a bit of sort of white on it. I'll exacerbate that a bit towards the end with a bit of dry brushing probably, but yeah, I think that's worked pretty well. And it's looking alright. It's picked up some of the detail around the pumps at the end and that sort of thing, so yeah, that's okay. So the next step is going to be, I'm just going to mask off the area at the top that's surrounded by the platform, because this seems to be largely unweathered. So I'll get that masked up, and it's got some weathering on it, but I'll do that by hand at the end. My original plan with this was to probably do wet on wet weathering, but looking again at the photo, I think this is probably a job for the airbrush. I think the airbrush is just going to make it have that sort of mottled effect that it seems to have, probably better than I would be able to achieve with a wet on wet, I think. And then I might use some sort of wash at the end to get a bit of streaking down the sides, if I think it needs it. I'm missing a bit of footage, which was the finishing up the masking of the top of the tank car, and a bit of a description of the paints that I'm using for this job, so I'll just quickly cover that off now. So for the top of the tank car, for the rust effect on the top, I'll be using XF9, which is Hull Red, not mixing that with anything else. I've just thinned it into a jar, and now I'll just go through the airbrush. I've thinned it very, very thin. That's mostly IPA with just a touch of XF9 in it, and then I'll layer that on as a filter over the top to get the colour down. Then for the underframe, I've used what I normally use, which is a mix of XF9 and XF90. XF90 is red brown 2. I've had those mixed for a while. I've used that for a couple of things. I've just added a dash of XF57 to this one, just to make it a little bit lighter, just to differentiate it from the top a bit more. I tend to use these colours for all of them. I use the underframe colour for the trucks as well, just to try and get a unified finish across all my stock, so that it all kind of works together on the layout once it's running. Okay, so I'll get on with putting a bit of colour on the top of the tank car. majority of the weathering on. We'll take these masks off. They made a huge amount of difference, but see how it looks. This top one will, and we'll get the rest of the weathering on there very shortly. Okay, so just to finish off, I've sprayed the trucks in my usual underframe dirt colour, which is a mix of Tamiya 90 and 9, which is the whole red, and I can't remember what the 90 is now, but it's just a mix of those roughly mixed together, and I'm use that for all my underframes, just to try and put everything together, to give a bit of consistency across all the models. So that's basic colour of that. And then looking at the truck, I'm just going to do a bit of dry brushing. This is again Tamiya XF14, which is JA Grey. And looking at this, I've obviously weathered it down with the brown mix, but I'm now going to try and highlight out some of the black highlights on the original, just with the dry brush. Put too much on there. There we go. Oops. Although it's black, I think over the brown, this sort of very light grey, I don't know if the effect shows out particularly clearly there, but it just highlights the springs and the metalwork around the sides of the trucks. It's only very light. That will probably be all I'm going to do with those. So I don't know if you can see that on there, but I'm just going to put some little blue highlights around the hubs there. Obviously blue on the original, they look more silver. I'll just not highlight them too much, but just pop a bit on there. There you go, they're looking alright. Okay, so final assembly is done. I'm just going to put a coat of TS80, which is the flat clear varnish over the top of the paint, and then get the couplings refitted, and that'll be it done. Okay, here we are at the conclusion of this project, the finished tank car. it's taken me a little while to get this set up for filming, and I think it's quite interesting doing this with different lighting and different backgrounds, and the impact that that has on how the weathering actually shows up on the car. It just shows how different lighting conditions, different viewing conditions affect how your weathering will be seen. It's certainly different looking at it on the camera viewfinder from how it is to the naked eye. It partly, I think on the camera it doesn't show up quite as much, but where it does show, it looks a bit starker, which perhaps sounds a bit strange, but it's a little bit more subtle to the naked eye, and the camera seems to be picking out certain elements of it. I think it just shows how the different filters of paint put on the car really are affected, as I say, by lighting and viewing conditions. A couple of bits I did that I didn't cover on the video, nothing particularly special. Up the top, looking at the photos, there was a bit of spillage round the manway and the hatches at the top. I did that with wet on wet, and it had a little effect. A little bit of it just ran down the side. Now I was originally going to wipe it off, but I think it's one of those. It's followed the seam of the tank, and I think that would happen probably in real life. So I decided to leave it. I think it's quite a nice little effect, just a bit of natural, just happened sort of naturally. So yeah, works quite well. It's quite an organic way of working it. I think, as I said at the start, I took the footways, handrails and ladders off before I started the weathering process. On the picture there, definitely weathered in a different way from the rest of the car, so I've just given them a little bit of a dry brush over just to highlight them a little bit, but I've kept them fairly low level weathering, just to make them stand out a bit from the rest of the car. And I just ran over the bottom of the ladders with a bit of the track dirt where there's some dirt sort of splashed up from the track. I've also done the couplings. I'm a little bit concerned how that's going to impact them coupling and uncoupling, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I might, if it affects it badly, I might have to pop them off and put the black ones back on, but they definitely look better weathered, and I will one day have to get the replace them with the actual sort of the tank car couplings. I can't remember what it's called, but they have the anti-override and underride bars on them. Something I'll probably do at some point in the not too distant future. The other thing I need to do, I've got to order from America because I can't find any in this country, is the conspicuity stripes on the side. I think I'm going to include them on most of my cars. I need to check the dates, but I think for most of what I'm going to be doing, they'll need them, so I'm going to pop them on. And they're the sort of thing going after weathering, because in a lot of cases they were a later addition to cars that were already in a bit of a state. So yeah, there we are. That's been an interesting project. My first tank car that I've weathered. I think it's looking pretty good. I'm happy with how it's turned out. Okay, thanks very much. I hope that's been interesting. Again, it's not so much a how-to as a sort of me having to go at these things. As I say, this is the first one of these I've done, so it's seeing how I've learnt, and hopefully you can see things I've done badly and the things I've done well. Hopefully that comes out in this video. I hope it was enjoyable anyway. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you next time.